That actually was very effective because I've been saying ladies and gentlemen, and I said educators, and everyone just like kept quiet. So I'm very glad for that. In case you just walked in, welcome to the second edition of the Teachers Edition of Abantu Voices. Abantu Voices, just to remind you, is a space where we intentionally make connections, but we're also amplifying voices that you wouldn't ordinarily hear when you open up your radio or turn on your TV. And we really seek to just have discussions, real discussions, unfiltered voices, and where we learn, we empower ourselves and each other, but more than anything, we connect and we purposefully and intentionally make a network of beautiful people like you, and you, my next guest, and you, and everybody else. So with that, my next guest is known as Mrs. LG to her learners, but she is a force within the Hong Kong education sector, where she has dedicated many years of her life understanding and contributing towards improving it. She's been teaching music in Hong Kong schools for over a decade, ensuring her learners hit the right notes and the lows and the highs in life. Dionne has seen it all, and in and outside the classroom, she knows all too well the highs and lows of teaching too. But instead of complaining about it, Dionne has used her contacts, her intellect, her research around the profession and experience as a teacher to start a movement that is creating a safe space for educators of color in Hong Kong. This is a space where educators can get empowered, find solutions together, exhale, vent, and vent, and vent some more, but they also hold each other accountable. It's kind of like a waiting to exhale for teachers. Isn't that cool? I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome my next guest, Dionne, Mrs. LG. Look, I had to summarize a lot that you are doing, and I really meant that. You're a powerhouse. Oh, okay. Is that better? Oh, yes. I sound like Barry White now. But should I repeat the intro, or are we good?
We're good.
We're good, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Right. Is it a bit uncomfortable hearing you, hear how amazing you are, though?
It's unusual, is what I would say. I spend a lot of time doing the talking to and about other people, so it's different.
Right. So you are from Barbados.
I am.
Give us a little glimpse of what's it like? What's the island life like? That was so bad of me, actually. Well, what was that? Like, cut that out, Mike. No, but on the real, let us know how was it for you? What do you distinctively remember about growing up in the Barbados?
What do I distinctly remember? Well, not necessarily starting from when I grew up there, but one thing after leaving there, the first thing that always strikes me when I land is how short all the buildings are. You know, like one story, maybe two stories, Geographically, it is a very flat island. Unlike other places in the Caribbean, we don't have all the mountains and rivers and things like that. So that sense of open space and really looking out onto the landscape was definitely something I took for granted. I think always being no more than 15 minutes away from an amazing beach was also something that was wonderful. I remember lots of summers where my parents are working and all of the cousins congregating at Mama's house, getting up to, well, I shouldn't say getting up to no good. It wasn't bad stuff. It's just, I might not set my kids open on the neighborhood in quite the same way as we were, but like a lot of fun, roaming the hills, picking dunks, picking ackies, going down to the beach. But obviously it's not just the stereotypical island life, island vibe. Like it was also, there was real community as well. There's really only 2 degrees of separation in Barbados. Everybody knows everybody. I don't need to stop you and ask you your name and get your phone number. Just when I get home, call my aunt. I saw so-and-so standing up by XYZ corner that looked like this and it looked like that, and it was with this body. And within 2 minutes, I know exactly who they are, where they live, who their family is. It was really helpful dating because you can also quickly find out who was married when they were flirting with you. Doesn't take long. So it's a very tight-knit place that has its pros, has its cons. And I think for me, by the time that I left to go to university, I was feeling more of those cons in that sense of wanting to stretch, wanting to grow, wanting to learn, see, and do a bit more. But it's very, very much still who I am.
What was celebrated and what was punished when you were growing up?
Definitely being who I am, I was shaped by the fact that learning and education was celebrated. Again, the geographics, we don't have the oil, we don't have the bauxite, we don't have the agriculture, etc. So it was very much an intentional political design as well to value education and the concept of investing in our people. So very much from an early age, it's, you go to school and you do well, you pay attention, you get everything out of it that you can. I think as a child, as much as I enjoyed school, there was almost a sense of this is my work, like this is my responsibility, this is my contribution, that my mother works hard, takes care of us, my job is to go to school and work hard and make the most out of that. Because very much it was, there's no inheritance coming from anywhere. The investment really was very much in education. I think creativity is also something that was really celebrated. We're very musical people. We're very, physical, active people. We all love dancing as well. So that was something. So I also learned to play piano from a very young age, so music was a very integral part, which eventually led to me being a music educator as well.
Then in comes Rihanna, who doesn't even finish high school. she must have put a lot of pressure on a lot of kids in Barbados. But not only did she not finish high school, but she is such a powerhouse. I mean, I think it's very difficult to have a conversation around Barbados and not reflect on the Rihanna effect, I would like to call it.
Sure, totally. Yeah, so it's interesting because in many ways, Rihanna and I are contemporaries. I'm not saying we're besties. But contemporaries, we did attend the same primary school.
Oh, which one is that?
We went to Charles F. Broome Memorial Primary School on Government Hill, St. Michael. Okay. She was a little bit younger than me, actually. But, obviously, at that point, she was just Robin Fenty to everyone. In secondary school, she did start to become kind of legendary. Actually, with her being a little bit younger, I was at that point doing my associate degree in music at community college, and she was going into the talent competition at Commonwealth School, her secondary school, and she came up the hill to get some help, actually, from some guys in the department for her talent show. Obviously, at that point, no one had any clue the supernova effect that was about to hit, the entire globe. And I'm really grateful, not only Rihanna, but you think, of other people. We've got a history in the Caribbean, too, of amazing intellectuals, Nobel Prize winners, world-class cricketers. Let's not talk about contemporary cricket in the Caribbean, but we set the bar, right, in a lot of things, actually. And as a Bajan woman, I am incredibly proud of who Rihanna is in the world, what she's done with the space that's been given to her. I know that she does credit a lot of that to her upbringing. She's still very, very connected to her community as well. And she gives back materially too, without necessarily splashing it. But there's lots of really, really great work that she continues to do in the community.
Right. And I also am in love with your Prime Minister. I think she's just so amazing, and she's so her thinking really is so robust. When I say that, I mean, she says things that people are thinking, but she says it. And from a nation that is so small, what's your population like right now?
275,000 people.
Right. So that's like 250,000. She punches way over.
But you have
weight,
to.
And I love that.
You have to. Yeah. I think growing up as well, there's things that, Mia Mottley as a prime minister, there's lots of things that she's bold enough and brave enough to say on a global stage that that sometimes surprises people, the punch that she packs. If you really know a Bajan woman, you ain't surprised by the punch. Ask my husband, okay? The way that she speaks, I'm not saying that it's ordinary by any means. She is extraordinarily articulate. But I think something that is prized in Barbados is speaking your mind, speaking the truth, saying things just as they are, which is something that when it comes to, moving about the world is a thing that I'm still having to navigate and get used to. The shadow boxing that people do, how they dress things up. But that idea of speaking truth to power is something that was relatively normal for me growing up in Barbados. There's a lot of political decisions that were made with really insightful leaders being very intentional about how we navigate the world, recognizing that if we don't do that, we will be cut and forced into the shape that other people have for us. And I think that that's something that we take to heart as individuals, as Bajans, as much as we do as a national identity.
I love that. So let's talk about who shaped you, who made you this powerhouse yourself, There has been a teacher that comes to mind that was in your life for a very short time, but she made such an impact. I mean, look at the smile that she's giving us right now. You know I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, Miss King.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know if she's ever going to see this. It would be interesting if she does. Miss King was a substitute teacher that I had, I think it was in class 3, which would be about year 5 in Hong Kong. Because things are so academically competitive in Barbados, so there's actually a lot about the Hong Kong context that very, very much resonates for me. From a young age, I was kind of singled out as being academically gifted. Some schools will very clearly stream kids by ability from early on. That didn't happen in quite the same way in my school, but was the sense of, it was clear. Like, you knew that the teachers had us in certain groups and we were expected to achieve certain things. So there was that sense of pressure. Miss King came in as a substitute teacher who didn't know me from the wall, right? So she came in and was just very open-minded. And I felt like being in that school for years with kind of this label on me, Miss King was someone who really just saw me in front of her as a person and allowed me to just be who I was, and not just define me by what I got on the test at the end of the week. And I had such a strong connection with her that I remember on her last day at the school, I stole her car keys and ran. I didn't know where I was running to, where I was gonna go, what I was gonna do with the keys. I mean, thinking back now, like, it was crazy. And I had this grown woman running across the pasture.
Because you didn't want her to leave.
Because I didn't want her to leave. Yeah. And I don't think I actually realized what I was missing, like that sense of being seen, until I had Miss King as a teacher who saw me in that way.
In today's context, what do you think it takes to be a Mrs. King?
Actually, I think it starts with seeing yourself. A lot of what can happen in the teaching profession, because all of us have been impacted by teachers. We've all been through schools and seen teachers, right? There's a lot that we can fall into as educators that are those, unconscious patterns, power dynamics that we buy into without really thinking about them. And we go into classrooms, and even with the best of intentions, if we haven't taken the time to unpack some of that and really understand who we are and see ourselves, it very much limits our capacity to be able to see the human beings that are in front of us.
But I would assume and I would hope that that would come with a lot of support. You would need to have a level of support for you to be a great teacher, for you to have what you've just mentioned and thoroughly outlined. Do you truly believe that in Hong Kong, teachers are supported?
No. That's an easy answer. Education is political, absolutely. And in my context, leading in an international school system, every day I'm so aware of, the neoliberal constructs that we're working in. Every teacher in this room knows that passion and heart that Miss Bruce was talking about is very easily commodified. And we use language like family and community when we want to extract emotional and psychological labor from teachers. But then we don't create the safe spaces and harbors that are needed to do the cup filling. I've heard it said that well-being is not our job as leaders. Well-being is the individual's job, and it's your job to take care of yourself, except if you're doing all the extracting and then leaving the work of the filling to those individuals. It starts to feel a little bit colonizing, actually, emotionally and psychologically, like we're just here to take what we need and profit off of it. It's totally fine if you're left dry, because when you leave the profession, we'll just hire someone else, right? And that's a pattern that we just see constantly being repeated.
Or when you burn out. What sort of support do you think that teachers should enjoy?
Before thinking about support, which I think is like the icing on the top, I really think we have to consider how we rehumanize our education system. The systems are really built around productivity. Even the way that we set up how we measure achievement for students is designed around a very product-driven type approach. So I think before thinking about how we support, which kind of implies that we leave the systems and structures the same, I really think we need to ask, how can we rehumanize education? What if we started with the fundamental needs that we have as human beings at the center of things, and then start to design what it looks like around that?
Before we get into something that you have started, the movement that you've started, where educators, especially educators of color, can feel supported in some way. Just your experience around talking to educators, what are some of the common hurdles that they are faced with within the classroom?
Where to start? I think actually I'll start where I just ended, in terms of that tension of coming into the classroom, really wanting to hold space for young people, really wanting to help people grow, really wanting to pour out and pour in. I think the first struggle is figuring out where that boundary lies, right? Where is the line? When am I giving too much? When am I doing too much? Leaders are very, very quick to say, oh, but it's for the children. And it's difficult to work out where that boundary is. I think that's very much a struggle. I think professional and career security and progression can also be a struggle, depending on where you are, what aspect or field of education you're in. And because we're in this context, I can also say that who you are racially and ethnically can very much also be a struggle, particularly in international education, where certain passports seem to speak louder than others, where you want the picture on the CV and people are sorting based on that. We still continue to tell this lie in international education about what particular picture parents want in the classroom, and use that to continue to perpetuate all kinds of prejudice and inequity. So I think battling those elements of the system is also another part of the struggle for educators. One other thing I think is thinking through, how much power do you have within school versus the power the system has, and then also thinking about parents and homes. There's lots of times where we're trying to support students through things, But you've got that limitation. They're in the building from 8 a.m. to 3:20 p.m., maybe till 4:30 for, extracurricular. And there are many students and families that sometimes stay on your mind because you feel like you wish you could reach into the home. You wish you could help build parent capacity for what that child needs. That's another thing that can be a struggle, is kind of dealing with the limitations of your influence, and knowing that you have to let go because there's other factors in the picture as well.
But you firmly believe that teachers have the power when the door is closed in a classroom. Can you maybe elaborate further on this?
Sure. So I think there's lots of ways, rules, regulations, protocols, etc., that leaders try to influence. And I do have, sometimes I find when I talk about leadership, I'm happy to say we. Other times I'm like, them, because I do feel like I lead a little bit differently. But your school comes up with a new initiative.
Pardon me, because you are in leadership position in your school currently. Correct.
Yeah. So your school comes up with a new initiative. You may or may not get consulted about it. You may or may not get to have your input on whether or not you truly feel it's the right thing for your students, but it's decided, that's it. This is the strategic focus for this year. Now go and do it. And so there can also be that struggle if you're being asked to engage in or participate in something that isn't quite sitting right with you, and then you have to go into your classroom and deliver it. How do you navigate that? I think it's incredibly important to always hold on to every ounce of the agency that you have. And I'm not necessarily telling you to go riot against your senior leadership team, although if you ever do believe that that is required, we can talk about ways to do that. But when the door closes and it's you and those 10, those 15, those 25 kids, it's you and those kids, okay? You're not under, 24/7 surveillance. So I absolutely think that is critical, that teachers never turn off their critical thinking and recognize that when that door is closed and it's you and those kids, you're responsible as well for the impacts that you have on them. Whatever that impact is, they're almost never going to leave and blame the principal or blame the school board. It's you who they are going to connect to that experience. And that's a huge responsibility that we have to bear. So I always say that I would rather fight with the adults than hurt the kids. Right? I'd rather you call me in and I have to have a difficult conversation with you about why I'm not following the practice that you're asking me to, than to place the cost of that on students because I'm not willing to fight that battle for them.
Right. There you go. This then brings us to the Hong Kong Global Majority in Educators Network.
Yeah, I know, it's long, sorry.
It's a mouthful, so we'll call it the Global Majority Network. Yeah. I think the name is very interesting. What gave rise to this name? And what are you guys about? So interestingly, we had a meetup at Africa Coffee Tea a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I remember that was the one where we were all, what are we going to call ourselves? What are we going to call ourselves? And we couldn't quite land on it. And it was like, this is what we are. We're in Hong Kong. We're a group of global majority teachers who work in international schools, so we're going to call it that. There was a healthy discussion at that table in the corner about whether or not we're going to call ourselves people of color or teachers of color. And we felt very much that we're tired of being defined in relation to whiteness. You don't hear people of pallor very often. So why is it that they get to kind of be normative? Now, I'm not knocking anyone who wants to claim, that identity of being a person of color. And there's some times and spaces where I'm happy to be, kind of considered in that way. But the term global majority was actually coined by a British academic whose name escapes me now. But it's very much about a counter narrative. We don't really play into this concept of being ethnic minorities, especially in Hong Kong. Who's the ethnic minority, right? Like very often when you hear white people using ethnic minority, they're
they're even sometimes referring to people of Chinese heritage, even when we're in Hong Kong. And that's something that was happening in DEIJ spaces in international schools, is that they were using this blanket term ethnic minority to just mean everyone who's not white. And it was really puzzling because it's like, when I look around and see where we is, like, no, we're globally speaking, brown people, black people, people of color are the global majority. So we felt it was important to name the group in a way that signifies our claiming of that counter narrative.
What can I expect? Okay. What can I expect if I had to join this particular network? You know, who benefits already and how?
Yeah, so at this point, we've got a group of about 35 teachers who work in international or independent schools. They all identify as global majority. We very much welcome, support, allyship, and co-conspirators who are of Caucasian background, but they cannot actually have full membership in the group. It's part of how we keep it psychologically safe. It's a space where people come onto the WhatsApp group, and we've got everything from celebrations about units of work that they've taught or something really good that happened in their building. We also have people who come on, like, I've just had this really confusing experience at work. Is it just me? Someone said this, but then this is what my principal said. He says it's this, like, you know, help me make it make sense. So there's a lot of times that it turns into a space for advocacy, place for support. Very often we might be one of the only ones or a very small group of people who look like us working in a particular school. I think one of the biggest impacts has been that sense of you're not alone, and no, it's not you. That sense of people trying to make you feel like you're literally going insane because your perspective is never validated, so you feel like you must somehow have it wrong. But that group is a space that helps people to really feel that sense of, yes, I can lean into the truth of my experience. But also once we do that, like, it's not just, okay, let's just come here and dump. It's also about how can we grow, what can we learn. One of the key things is this idea of we can't learn what we already know, right? So in school spaces, often when they're talking about DEIJ work, they're starting at 101, right? Like, hey, everybody, let's look around and notice that not everyone looks the same. Okay, took you a while. You know, and they really start with things that are absolute basics. I think a lot of it is performed ignorance, but that's another story. But it's that sense that not that we don't have things to learn when it comes to equity work and inclusion work, but there's a lot of that stuff we already know. There's some other stuff we don't know that we need to figure out. How to strategize better, how to navigate these spaces in ways that can protect our psychological safety, how to genuinely build community with momentum that can lead to meaningful change. Those are the kinds of workshops that I want to see. We've also been able to highlight really good work. We've got one author in the room who's been featured in our sessions, Daniela.
Hey, Daniela.
We've also featured the work of the DEIJB lab, which is run by Professor Pooja Kapai out of HKU. She's also doing great work to increase access to literature that is fully representative of all the walks of life that are present here in Hong Kong. So as much as there's the space for processing those more challenging emotions, it's also about trying to create that space for growth and for pouring into ourselves, both emotionally, psychologically, but also on the professional side, the things that we do need to learn and arm ourselves with in order to go back into the classroom and be effective educators.
Yeah. What I also really love about the movement is that there's a high level of safety, because it's not about the school that you represent. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes when we vent, we realize that, oh, this could actually compromise my paycheck. But with this movement, mm-hmm. with the network, it's a safe space that you can do this. You can seek for guidance. You can, get some sort of tools, but also just being empowered, and while also being able to keep your job at the same time, which is quite important.
If that's what you want, because sometimes you just need to throw it away. But if you want to keep it,
put in the RR, right? The double R's.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've had really, not even nuggets. You've given us like big shells of things that we can chew on. But I do want to open up the floor to some questions from the audience. I saw an international teacher or international school teacher who was nodding so vigorously when you were saying things. I wonder, are you part of the network, Zama?
The network that she's teaching it?
Correct. No, she's not teaching it. It's a network of teachers from all over international schools in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Exactly. That is exactly why I've targeted you, because I'm like, this could benefit so many people. How do we hop on to this if we are interested?
Yeah, so talk to me. I'll add you to the group chat. Get ready, buckle up. But actually, it raises an interesting question, because it's something that has grown very organically. And we've also been very intentional, like we don't splash things on social media and that kind of thing. Part of it is about that psychological safety piece, because for some people it's like, okay, well, if my principal knows that I'm associated with this kind of thing, how might that reflect? We may be getting to a point where that starts to shift and change and think about how can we connect, because it's the other problem is, how do people know that we're here? And we'd really like anyone who feels that they can benefit to know that we exist without it having to be, oh, I met someone who knows someone.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that we need to think about.
Yeah, and I think what's really beautiful about this particular space is that there are educators in the room, and there are educators that would benefit from what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be, broadcast somewhere, but they are able to just reach out to Dionne and have a conversation with her. Any other questions? There you go.
I want to know.
I'll come. Well, hold on. We need a microphone for you. And also, we also need your name and your security number.
My name is Heather. I'm a teacher at VSA, which is in this neighborhood. I'm also a member of Dionne's network. And the question I have for you is, what did Miss King do when she caught you?
Girl, I can't remember. I really don't remember. I remember that she caught me right by the tamarind tree. I do remember actually then a deep, deep hug and lots of tears. And thankfully, that was not the last day that I saw Miss King. I did see her many more times after that.
Hi, Dionne. I'm Shari here from Toronto, Canada, a returner to Hong Kong. My question is, I'm going to try to be concise with it, but my question is around you being in leadership, and I am assuming the amount of things that you have to hold, the roles that you have to play. You sprinkled a little bit of some resistance talk in the mix, which that surprised me a little bit, not because of the space that you're in, that you have to support as a leader. And my question is around, how do you get watered in a space where you are probably depleted, you are probably being poured out, and there's heavy expectation coming from you, expected of you, assuming again here, because of the body that you are in, because of the space that you are in, and the role that you intend to surpass. Yeah? So I want to know, how do you get watered? How do you experience love to pour back into you, so that you can love on not only the students, but also your staff and those that are looking up to you to lead?
Great question.
Thank you, Shari.
As you were asking that, the first thing that came to me in terms of getting watered is having strong roots, right? We already talked about the Bajan part, so I won't dig too deep into that. But I think also it was a real privilege to grow up in a place where I was represented everywhere, where all my teachers looked like me, my principal looks like me, the policeman looks like me, the politicians looked like me. I mean, we all know that there is a very powerful, wealthy minority in Barbados that doesn't look like me, but in terms of the socializing, it's not strange to me to be in a room and be listened to. It became very strange once I left Barbados to start realizing that people seem to think that because of what I look like, that what I have to say doesn't quite matter as much. So I think in terms of being watered, those strong roots would be the first thing, right? I think then community is huge. So a global group, which if you don't know already, you need to join, the Association of International Educators and Leaders of Color, known as ALOC. ALOC, I think, saved me professionally and personally at a point where I felt incredibly disillusioned about what we could accomplish in terms of equity in schools. I joined an ALOC Zoom, immediately log on to a screen full of educators of every hue, who it was really a magnified version of what I'm now trying to create with the local global majority group. I was able to create that because I'm a member of a group like ALOC, and ALOC has like 15, at least, if not more, events every month. Like there's a real menu of things that you can log on to. If you think I'm sprinkling resistance, ALOC is like a hurricane of resistance, right? And wellness events and that kind of thing. So staying really connected to the ALOC community is a really big part of it. And I have a wonderful family, both back home in Barbados, abroad, we're also scattered, and here in Hong Kong as well. My husband, my kids, all pour into me as much as I pour into them. And so whatever building I walk into, I'm never walking there alone. We go all the way back to ancestors, to my immediate family, that I'm coming from in Barbados, and the family that is here with me now. But also you have to step away from things at times, knowing when to say no. Even actually to come to this today, when Lirandzu first asked me, I was like, I don't know. Because April is packed, and I first need to check that I have windows for wellness on my calendar in April before I can come back and say yes to you. So tomorrow I'm doing nothing. Like after this, I'm gonna sleep for 36 hours. Okay? I already told the kids. It's right, so it's boundaries, strong roots, and then putting yourself in the place to be watered and connecting with community.
Thank you for that, Dionne. Your story is powerful, but also I think it empowers all of us. Even I'm not an educator, but I feel so empowered by what you just said, I'm like, where do I sign up? More than anything. But I think it's also very important that we do have outlets. I always talk about that to my friends. I'm like, you know what? We need an outlet. As much as we can, be everything for everyone, but we need an outlet, our own personal outlet. Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned so many avenues that you're tapping into, including your beautiful family. But also, you're just like a ball of energy. She can party, this lady, by the way. So that's another outlet that she didn't mention officially. But thank you so much for being so open and being so honest about your story. I am not going to allow anyone to get up, unfortunately. What, is there a question? Oh yeah, by the way, but just forewarning, I'm not going to, I can't afford to let anyone get up from their seat in mass to go get a drink before we welcome Miss X, because it's going to take long and it's getting late. So I'm going to ask Kayla to give us one question, and then we'll go straight to our next guest. Cool? All right.
Thank you. Hey. Hey. So being in music, I really commend you, because I'm homeroom, and a lot about my job is pastoral care and teaching them how to human. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot about being gentle and light and encouraging. But with music, I think it's a bit more cutthroat, really, in terms of the pressure being like, not only from the parents who want their kids to learn an instrument, more than one instrument, and then perform at various ages, but then pressure from the school to create performers, and the bigger the international school, the bigger they want in terms of performers, and So how do you balance the pressure from both your school, the organization internally, and then the parents, versus reminding the child that the instrument should be from love and passion, and not just being like, okay, mommy and daddy want you to be an amazing whatever instrument,
So I feel like I recognize what you're saying in terms of those dynamics, but I'm not sure that has been my particular experience. I'm not in the music classroom as often these days, but when I think about some of those classes that stand out, we had a lot of fun, actually, in music. And what tends to happen is that kids who are high performing in music are actually pressured to move away from it because it's seen as a really, really nice hobby and an excellent skill that helps round you out. But when it's time to think about career, then we don't proceed. So what I tended to see actually was that kids who were really passionate about it then being discouraged. Like one of the best singer-songwriters I ever had in my class, she was amazing, left to go do a law degree. And it's not that I think she won't be a great lawyer, but it was just that hope and wish that she finds a space to do that. On the other hand, I also had a brilliant piano player and composer. He was phenomenal, and his parents did give him that space, and he went on to Berkeley. So I tend to kind of see a little bit of both. But I found the space that was the most transformative for me as a music teacher was in teaching choir. That was a space where I think body as an instrument, there was a real heart-soul connection in that work. And the last day I conducted my choir, I cried like a baby.
Last question from me. What has been your most favorite age to teach?
Favorite age to teach, I guess being in secondary most of my career, definitely biased towards older kids. I think I really enjoy my year 12 and 13s, actually. I teach them a course called TOK, which is Theory of Knowledge. So they get all the resistance sprinkling because that course is all about questioning what we think we know and how. And I take some, creative license to push that conversation a little bit further, and because they're ready to go out into the big wide world and there's certain bigger ideas that they can really grasp, we can have a lot of fun deconstructing things in that class. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mrs. LG. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.